Here it is, gang. The modern day, ultra modern, internet version of lo-fi.
Modern day, ultra modern version.
And here's the thing that's happening, in which I've got the audio monitor turned on, so I've got an endless feedback loop going on here. So I'm going to reach over and turn that off. Don't know if you guys can hear that. It sounds like a Laurie Anderson sound sculpture or something. Okay, whatever. I got to drop all pretense now. I have to throw away the curtain, and now you can see the man behind the curtain, and that is moi, Malcolm Tent, bringing you this week's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. Yeah! Once again, overcoming almost impossible odds, wrestling with arcane technologies, resisting, making a Herculean effort to resist the urge to pick up the technology, whether it be the camera or the phone or the monitor, resisting the urge to grab any one of those or all of them and hurl them in a rage against the nearest hard surface. Yes, I overcome all of that every single week just to bring you Tent Talks Tunes. I do it all for you, people. Oh, I do suffer mightily, but you know what? Art doesn't come cheap. It doesn't come without misery, pain, suffering, and agony. So that's why I do Tent Talks Tunes every week. I've got at least a little bit of a masochistic streak running through me. That and the fact that I just love to talk tunes. I can't help it. It's the way I'm wired. It's like Mark E. Smith once said, I am totally wired when it comes to music and the artifacts relating to music. I will now hoist the very famous and fabled gallon jug of Danbury Tap and drink a toast to that. Who's tuned in? Mike Lesser, who for some strange reason is on the East Coast. Hello, Mike. Hello, Alan Versapellis. My birthday buddy, Jenny DeSoto, is tuned in. I don't know, Jenny, how did you know I was thinking about you this morning? I don't know why that was, but I was just sort of going through my mental Rolodex of people who I have not been in touch with lately, and you came to mind. So you must have gotten my psychic vibe. Glad to see you tuned in from the wild, wild state of New Jersey. Good to have you on board. So yeah, guys, it has been, as always, just a weird, wild, wacky, woolly week here at TTTHQ. There's just always something going on. It never stops. And we're going to get right down to it right now in it. We're going to check the bulletin board, and then we're going to check the mailbox, and then we're going to talk about some tunes. But first, as happens in this crazy, crazy life, we got to take a little bit of a detour. It happens a lot. Life throws us curveballs, and I got my favorite curveball right here, hovering around my ankles. You guys know what this is all about. Yes, he used to be camera shy, but now he's an internet star. I'm talking about the one and only Harry the Cat. Harry zooms in on the radar when he detects me sitting here alone in my office, chatting nonstop. He knows that something is up, and he knows that he's going to get his camera time. So he comes on in and hogs all the glory from me, his happy, hairless homemaker, the guy who feeds him, the guy who pets him, the guy who changes his litter box, the guy who shamelessly solicits sales of records, tapes, and CDs so I can buy him his kitty crunchies and his kitty litter. Yes, Harry the Cat. But you know what? Who could resist a one-eared wonder like this guy? Who could resist him? As you guys may know, Harry's been an indoor cat now for about a year, I would guess. My neighbor across the street is a master carpenter, and I called him up one day and said, man, could you make a catio for my beloved Harry the cat because, you know, he's an outdoor cat and he loves roaming the neighborhood and he's the boss of the block. But the problem is, in his role as boss of the block, he was always getting into cat fights. Some of which he would win, some of which he would lose, almost all of which resulted in injuries that required me taking him to the vet. In fact, the very reason why we call him the one-eared wonder, as you guys can see, is he's got 1.5 ears. His ear is really crumpled, and that's the result of an infection he got during a cat fight. And it seems like every time he got into a fight with one of the neighborhood cats, they would go straight after either his crumbled ear or his good ear. And I figured it was just a matter of time until he had 2 cauliflower ears. Not to mention the fact that he would roam the neighborhood freely and come back covered in poison ivy, which he would then lovingly rub all over me, and then I would get poison ivy, and ticks, and vermin, and dead birds, and dead squirrels, and dead chipmunks, and dead snakes. The guy's a killer. You wouldn't know by looking at this cute, adorable little face, but this guy's a killer. An absolutely perfectly designed killing machine. That's why I'm glad he's not my size. That's why I'm glad he's a little tiny guy like this. Look at this guy. Have you ever met a killing machine who liked to get in their chin rubbed like that? Oh, he likes it. He likes it a lot. So yes, I'm glad he's this size, and I'm glad that now he's an indoor cat. So no more fights, no more poison ivy all over me. And I think he's adjusted very well to it, so that's a good thing. And it's a guarantee, almost, that he'll be here every week for Tent Talks Tunes. Let's see, who is tuning? Hey, my BFF Jill, who's known me from the high school days. She says that one of these days she's going to come up for a visit, and we're going to do a TTT together, but like the Skipper Chuck show. Oh my God. I already have a large part of the set built in the Skipper Chuck fashion. If any of you people out there are of a certain generation, you'll remember the wonderful kids TV shows that it seems like every single local TV station in the world used to have. Like every TV station in a local market had a kids show that would air, you know, either on Saturday mornings, pretty much any morning, really. Like our main one was the Skipper Chuck show, which aired on Channel 4 in Miami. And it was a big deal. Skipper Chuck was the man if you were like 6th grade and under. And then on Channel 7 on Sundays, there was the Sunday Funnies, which was read by Wayne the Weatherman. He would get a bunch of kids together in the studio with Toby the Robot, and they would all read the Sunday morning comics. So yeah, local TV kids shows were awesome and a half. And I wonder, maybe Mike or Jill, are you guys aware of any archived episodes of Skipper Chuck out there anywhere? Does anybody have any? Is there anything on YouTube anywhere? I know that when one of my younger brothers was on the Skipper Chuck show, my mom had a silent 8mm film camera, which she aimed at the TV screen and was able to document his appearance on the Skipper Chuck show. And I do believe that my brother was part of the famed Skipper Chuck balloon drop. I do believe so. So, okay, Jill says that if you go on YouTube, you can find Skipper Chuck. Jill, can you post a link? Or are you just speculating? Do you know for sure that there is one? If there is, I would love to see it. Skipper Chuck, Scrubby, Uncle Don, the hip-swinging young guy. They got to play the organ on air after Uncle Don died. I mean, dude, I would probably sit there and watch that stuff for hours, given the chance. Maybe it's good that we don't have that link, because I'm a busy guy, and yes, I don't have time to sing Gee Whiz It, Who Is It, all day and all night, when I should be doing stuff like promoting the upcoming Danbury Record and CD Expo. How is that for a smooth segue? We went straight from Skipper Chuck to the only event on the bulletin board, which is the Danbury Record and CD Expo. It is happening this Saturday, the 21st. I co-promote it, so you know I'm going to be there with not 1, not 2, but 3 tables full of swag. I've been pricing records like a fiend for almost the last month. Here's a few I priced today, man. How about an original Daniel Johnston Yola Tango 7-inch speeding motorcycle? How about a rather rare late period Monkees picture sleeve? This is after Peter Tork quit the band and they were just a trio. This record probably sold about 10 copies. How about some 5, 6, 7, 8s? I don't know how a stupid band like Jimmy Eat World ended up in my inventory, but I have it. Well, I'm going to sell it. Nothing else to do with it. What else have I been pricing? I'm going to be pricing this Jad Fair record a little bit later. How about some just good solid rock and roll like Queen, Sheer Heart Attack, original pressing? We got all that kind of stuff. Steely Dan. I bring the obscure and the skure. I also found this. This was quite a gobsmacker. I was going through the boxes of 45s, and I've had this laying around for a long time. This has been in one of my random boxes of 45s just about forever, and it's got an old Rhymes Records price tag on it. Rhymes Records, one of the great New Haven record stores, $3. So somewhere along the line, someone paid $3 for this Smith's 45, and I said, all right, I randomly reached into the box of 45s to grab some records to price, because that's how I do it. I really like the random aspect of things. Randomly grabbed it, saw this one thing, yeah, it's kind of cool, it's a cover variant I've never seen before, let's look it up and find out some information of it. Well, all I can say is if you guys want to experience some real sticker shock, type in the Smiths hand-in-glove negative sleeve. Smiths hand-in-glove negative sleeve. And I got one. And this is the original. This is not the reissue. This is the real 1983 deal. So I'm not going to put this one on the table. I got to figure out a way to sell this one. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'd have to call an auction house or something and do it like the big boys and the big girls do. You never know what you find until you look. So anyway, Danbury Record and CD Expo, me and an entire room full of dealers, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm loaded for bear. Come and get it. That also includes a couple of crates of my private personal punk and hardcore stash, which has never been offered for sale to the public before, ever. So, there's some incentive for you. And I've thoughtfully littered my backdrop with Danbury Record and CD Expo flyers, so you really can't see anything else other than me, them, and maybe if Harry puts his tail up on occasion, little pieces of Harry. So there you go. Focus, guys. Focus. Focus, focus, focus. Let's see here. Oh, we got Toady Arena in here. Larry Mann, he's a New Haven guy. He remembers Cutlers. Who else is tuned in here? Too much effort to see what's going on here. Yes. Mail call. It's been kind of a slow mail week this week, but in a way, that's good because I really do have so much to do. But since I'm a total masochist, I'm going to show you my mailing address. Malcolm Tent, P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. Malcolm Tent, P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. I am definitely a big fan and advocate of the mail swap. Going back to the good old days of punk and hardcore when people would send records and cassettes and zines back and forth to each other and cross-pollinate our collections and learn about new stuff and new things. So I got this box. You all might have seen the return address very briefly from Rock Hill, South Carolina. The name Jeff Clayton. I got a mailer sized like an LP. That, my friends, indicates excitement. Yes, lots of excitement. I do believe I know what's in this box, but you can see the seal is intact. The seal is unbroken. It's all there. So I'm going to reach on over. I have to do this without disturbing Harry because he's very comfortable on my lap right now. And if I reach over for the Million Mile Scissors, I'll have to dump them off my lap, and we don't want that. No. So I'm going to very carefully slide the seat of power over and reach over to my desk drawer and very gently slide the seat of power back into camera range, and we have the 100,000 mile box cutter, which we will very carefully and gingerly slice open so as not to injure the contents or myself or Harry the cat. Remember, when you're using a box cutter, slow and steady wins the race. The attitude about that is very much like my own personal record collection. No rush. Get it? Although, I have to say, I'm not above pandering a little bit. I do have some Rush albums I'm going to be selling this weekend at the Danbury Record and CD Expo. Sorry, guys. I don't have to like every single thing I sell. Although I'll come to admit, okay, and Jill E., you're watching right now. Jill and I've known Jill since I was a senior in high school. And one issue that we've butted heads on repeatedly, nonstop over the decades, is the issue of Rush. She loves Rush. I always hated Rush. But before anybody starts popping their buttons, I would just like to state that I have indeed reached a state of détente with Rush. I saw the documentary about Rush that came out a few years ago, and what everybody said was true. They said, you know, you might not like the band, or you might not like their, excuse me, you might not like the music of Rush, but by the time you're done with that documentary, you're going to like the people in Rush, with the possible exception of Neil Peart. But you're definitely going to like Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, and sure enough, man, I really, really enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the story, and I definitely got the impression that I would probably have a good time hanging out with 2 out of 3 members of Rush. So it made me kind of soften my approach on them a little bit, to the extent where I was pricing a Rush record last night, and I had to needle test it, you know, to make sure it played okay. The one with Spirit of the Radio on it. I don't remember the name of it. But for the first time in my entire life, I actually listened to a Rush album, at least one side of a Rush album, from start to finish. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Even Geddy Lee's voice was not enough to make me stand up and rip the damn thing off the turntable and throw it out the window. Maybe I am getting old. I don't know. But really, it was not horrible. It wasn't horrible. And tonight I have to flip that record over and needle test side 2. Who knows? I might even make it through side 2 uninterrupted. Maybe I'll let you guys know how it went next week on 10 Talks Tunes. I make no promises, but hey, whatever. How did I get on Rush? Oh yeah, making bad puns while talking about the slow and careful way to open up a box that you get in the mail. Meanwhile, we got some things, people tuning in. Hey, there's Mike Muldoon. Mike says that Harry likes Rush. I doubt it very much. Mr. John the Bomb Coletti is tuned in. He's going to be selling records this weekend at the Danbury Record and CD Expo, just saying. And welcome aboard. Now we're going to open the box. Open 1 flap. Open 2 flap. Flaps 3 and 4 kind of pop open on their own volition. We've got some really good solid packing material. And yes, we have what I wanted it to be, because I am a fan, I am a collector, and I must say that the people at at Blood Orange Records have been doing a bang-up job of reissuing the early G.G. Allin and the Jabbers catalog. The early stuff, which was far more straight-ahead punk rock, which had a lot less emphasis on the onstage shenanigans. And if you know Gigi, you know what I'm talking about. The shenanigans were definitely at play at this time, but not to the extent that they would be later. This is just good, solid, straightforward New England punk rock from the early 80s. And these guys, are reissuing the stuff, I think, the way it should be done. Every release that I've seen has lots and lots of liner notes and history and the stories behind all the records and their times and graphics and stuff like that. So you really get a history lesson with every release. And I try to do that with my stuff. When I reissue Gigi or whoever else, I try to include as many photos and liner notes and stories and whatnot as possible, because you really, it's like with any artist, really. Any artist who puts out a record or multiple records is making history and is a part of music history. And I think it's really critical that the history be documented and preserved. So I'm really giving a tip of the hat to the people at Blood Orange for really working hard to straighten out the G.G. Allin catalog and getting it presented in a historically accurate and respectful way. So thank you, Jeff Clayton, for sending those. I will be sending you, Jeff, as we discussed earlier, at least one. I don't know how many copies we're talking about, but some of the brand new Tiny Tim album coming out on TPOS, which is poised on the verge of getting it on in the marketplace. Kind of the same deal. If I didn't have this cat loafing on my lap, I would reach over and grab a copy of that Tiny Tim record and show it to you guys, but can't disturb the cat. It's just not acceptable. Not allowed. Ain't gonna happen. This dude is planted. He is situated. And I, as the happy, hairless, human caretaker of this guy, am obligated to leave him so. So we'll do some show and tell on the brand new Tiny Tim next week, because it'll be officially out by then anyway, so patience pays off. So let's wet our respective whistles here with some more of that delicious Danbury tap. Mercury fortified. It's almost enough to make me think that I've got a case of the Hatter's Shakes. So yeah, let's talk about some autographs. What do you think of that, guys? That's the focus of this week's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. And Harry just flew the coop. See you later, guy. See you later, guy. Now I can move a little more freely. That's good. Yeah, autographs, man. I'm not just the guy who buys and sells and trades records. I'm not just the guy who runs a record label and releases stuff. I'm a fan. I am a fanboy, boy. And I love autographs. I really do. I'm the type of dude who, if the situation is right, will have no problem asking for an autograph. And this whole thing was triggered by the fact that I went to go see Bob Mould play a solo electric show down at the Fairfield Theater Company in Fairfield, Connecticut. This was this past Friday, or Saturday, I should say. Saturday the 14th? Yes, Saturday the 14th. And any of you guys who know me know what a gigantic mark for Husker Du I am. Husker Du are in my permanent top 3 bands. Permanent top 3. The top 3 bands are always Devo, Black Flag, and Husker Du. Always. That doesn't change. The remaining 7 to 13 slots in the remaining top 10 to top 20 are pretty solid. You know, it's a pretty steady roster of my favorite top 10, top 20 bands. You know, there's a little bit of jostling here and there, but the top 3 are always Devo, Black Flag, and Husker Du. Non-negotiable. So, yeah, I'm a mark for Husker Du. And even though I'm more of a Grant Hart man, and of course it is almost inevitable that if you get a bunch of Husker geeks together, the argument's always going to be Grant versus Bob. Who's your favorite songwriter, Grant Hart or Bob Mould? Who is the one that really floats your boat musically? Dude, I'm going to tell you right now, I love Bob Mould's songwriting. Love it. The stuff he does is brilliant, especially when he was with Husker Du. I mean, that band was unstoppable when they were at their zenith. And they were at their zenith pretty much their entire career. They were like a locomotive rolling down the tracks, man. And Bob Mould's songwriting was an absolutely critical part of that. He wrote the majority of the songs. But Grant, there's just something about his songs that just get me in a certain way that Bob Mould's don't. And I think that as much good stuff as Bob has done in the post-Husker Du days, it's kind of the same deal. Grant's solo records, whether they be his solo albums or the stuff he did with the Nova Mob, those are the ones I go back and listen to regularly. I'll occasionally listen to some solo Bob or some Sugar, but I can put on a Grant Hart record anytime, and just totally go to sound heaven. John Murray says that this argument makes no sense at all. Yes, if you're a Husker Du fan, you get the joke. Anyway, Bob Mould playing solo electric at Fairfield Theater Company, and the rest of the story, my long rambling discourse on going to this one single concert, is that since I'm on the supply side of things now, you know, whether I'm with Antiseen or doing my solo bit or doing stuff with Profanatica, I'm like on the road so much and I play so many shows that when I'm at home, I really don't feel like going to see another show, you know, on my downtime. And that for me, and again, for people who know me and people who've known me for a long time, that's a really weird thing for me to say. Like, I've spent my entire life going to shows, if not playing them. And it's always been one of my great joys, is just going to see shows and seeing bands. And it's just so funny because being on tour and playing, you know, night after night after night, and seeing bands night after night after night after night. Like if I do, say, a 2 or 3 week tour, I could see anywhere up to 50 bands in a very short period of time, in addition to playing a whole bunch of sets. So, and that's in addition to the travel and everything that relates to it. So by the time I get home, I've seen so many bands and I've played so many shows that really all I want to do is just kind of sit at home and relax and really just not go out. And that is really odd, but I've come to really cherish my at-home quiet time as what it is. So it was really interesting that when Bob Mould was playing in Fairfield that I decided to go, but I got to admit, I had an ulterior motive. Ulterior motive. And it does indeed relate to my absolute freakish devotion to the band Husker Du. I've met, over the past years, all the members of Husker Du at various times. And once again, Grant is the one who I got to know the best. Can't say we were bosom buddies. Can't say that we were, go to lunch every Monday pals or anything like that. But we knew each other. We were friendly with each other. We always had pleasant conversations. What time I did spend with him, I enjoyed a lot. He was great company, a fascinating dude. Got to meet Greg Norton once at a show with his band at the time called Gang Font. And since those dudes are both so very approachable, and I had, very friendly relations with Grant, I was never shy about asking for autographs. So we got Greg Norton to sign the back. And he chose to sign the back. I don't know why, but he went and signed the back of this copy of Warehouse. And he signed the back of another copy of Warehouse, which is pretty cool. And he signed the front of a copy of Flip Your Wig, right there on the flower. And that's pretty cool because from what I'm told, Greg Norton is the most difficult autograph to get because he doesn't, from what I understand, he doesn't really ever leave Minnesota, or specifically Red Wing, Minnesota. He's got a successful restaurant there. He's got a band that he plays with out there, but they don't really tour. He's a busy guy. He's rooted to his business. So if you want to get a signature from Greg Norton, you got to go to him. You got to go to Red Wing, Minnesota and track him down at the restaurant and hope he's not busy, that you're not bothering the guy, and get him to sign something or catch one of his bands when they play locally. So it was just really one of those dumb luck things that his band Gang Font played a show in New York City back in 2007. And I, of course, made a beeline straight there. He signed him. Very cool. Now, Grant, on the other hand, I shouldn't say on the other hand. Well, yeah, I'll say it on the other hand. I'll say on the other hand that Grant was on the road an awful lot. And so he was always gigging, always touring. He definitely ran hot and cold. Sometimes he was approachable, sometimes he wasn't. And after a while, as he and I got to be more friendly, it sort of got to where it just wasn't really cool to ask him for an autograph, because it was sort of like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it was just very clear that he wasn't going to sign autographs because we were hanging out and he didn't want to be on the clock on those occasions. So during those times before that, when I would either go to one of his shows or one of the several times that we actually played shows together in New York and Connecticut, he very kindly added his signature to this copy of Flip Your Wig with his idiosyncratic autograph. He also signed the bottom corner in his typical fashion, red on red, the front of Warehouse. And then on a separate occasion, in black on the front of Warehouse, and he actually inscribed that one to me. So that was pretty cool. And that's on top of any number of like Grant solo records and Nova Mob records he signed. So thank you, Grant. Thank you, Grant. Very cool of you. And so that just left one more signature to get, to have complete Husker Du signatures on these 3 records. And that, of course, was Bob Mould. And the last time I saw Bob Mould, gee whiz, was probably in 1999 or so. It had been a long time since I saw Bob Mould play live. A large part of that, and I've had this discussion with a lot of Bob Mould fans, is that when Bob plays, it is hit or miss. It's 50-50. He's either going to be awesome, red hot on fire, or he's going to punch the clock, play the set, punch the clock, and go home. And I don't like those odds. I don't like those odds. I want to know that I'm going to get some value for my money and my travel time by seeing an awesome set. And Grant, same deal, man. Anybody who ever saw Grant Hart knows that his performances could be very hit or very miss. But even on a bad night, he was always entertaining. He was always engaging. He was always entertaining, So it was always worth going to see Grant, and you never knew what you were going to get. He played a different set every night, whereas Bob Mould plays the exact same set every night on a tour, and if he's not feeling the inspiration, it's going to be very run-of-the-mill. And besides, as I said before, I don't listen to his post-Husker output nearly as much as I did Grant's. So it was just always a little bit too much of a crapshoot, and I never felt that passionately about going to see Bob Mould live. But gosh darn it, if he's just playing 45 minutes down the road, I gotta. And besides, I'm a man on a mission. I need to get a complete set of Husker Du autographs on these records. Especially now that Grant's not with us anymore. You become very aware of everybody's mortality and the ticking of the clock. Now, I've read Bob Mould's autobiography, See a Little Light, and it's an interesting read. Husker aficionados have very strong opinions about this book, as do I. Not going to get into that. But he talks specifically in this book about how after he plays his solo gigs, he likes to hang out with the fans, sign autographs, answer questions, whatever. Very user-friendly. So I said, all right, this is it. I'm not on the road. the show is just down the road, and he says he's a user-friendly guy. I'm going to get me some autographs. So I go down there, and he was, this time he's on tour with a guy named Jason Narducci. Hope I got the name right. It was really cool, put on a great show, very entertaining. And then Bob came on, and what do you know? He was on that night. He was having a real good night. So he played a really upbeat, positive, energetic set. About an hour and 14 minutes on the nose. Left the stage, and then after a short little break, sure enough, he came out and started heading for the merch table. And I was talking to some friends, and when I saw him come out the dressing room door and start heading towards the merch table, I was like, see you guys, gotta go. I was fanboy instantaneously. I had all my stuff in the bag. I don't think I ran, but I definitely walked real fast over to that merch table. And what you know, I was first in line. He was just standing there. I said, hello, Bob. He reached out to shake hands. And I immediately just had a whole bunch of stuff with him. He was kind of like, oh. But I shook his hand. And sure enough, he just whipped out the Sharpie and started signing. No problem that I had multiple items, including the copy of Warehouse, which now has his signature on the front, along with Grant's and Greg's. Another copy of Warehouse, which has got a signature in the same spot on the front, along with Grant's and along with Greg's. And what I believe to be the Husker Du masterpiece, the album of albums for these guys, Flip Your Wig. This is the one that really means the most. A complete set of autographs by the artists on the best album they ever made. To me, this is like Van Gogh signing a painting. To me, this is 3 master signatures on a masterpiece. This one's going with me into my coffin. Not for sale. Ever. Mine, baby. Mine, 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 mine. And of course, I'm very happy to have the signatures on Warehouse, too. Because lurking within this distended, sprawling, overstuffed double album is one kick-ass album. And to this day in my car, I have a mix I made of the 12 best songs from this album, plus a Greg Norton song that was on a B-side. That's the version of Warehouse I listen to. So, yes, if you do enough picking and grinning, you will find a bitchin' album in the middle of all this. But it doesn't, it doesn't move me the same way that Flip Your Wig does. Whatever. That's the way albums are. Some do, some don't. But, yeah. Got him, man. Got him. Complete set of Husker Du autographs. And Bob, he still had the pen out, so I gave him a copy of the book. The front page had a little bit of damage on it, so we went to the second page. To Malcolm. Thanks, Bob Mould. And I was really feeling frisky and energetic, so he had a bunch of LPs on the merch table. I said, Bob, if I was to choose just one, which one? And he said, you got to get Blue Hearts. Okay, recommended by the artist himself. I bought it. He patiently waited while the transaction went down, cracked it open, and he signed his very funny portrait on the inside. In fact, he pulled it out and said, oh, look, it's a picture of Phil Oakes. I got the joke. So, yeah, very pleasant experience getting signatures from Bob Mould. So, yeah, man, complete Husker Du and a couple of really awesome Bob pieces. Yay! Man, I got almost wore out talking about that alone, man. Gee whiz. Let's talk about some more autographs I got. Now, I'm a guy who definitely, I've got a fair number of autographed records, but of course the ones that are the most special are the ones that I've harvested in person. The story I just told you about that one. Here's one. This hangs in my music room, and I hope you guys can see it. Because I actually have this one framed and hanging. This one means a lot. You can see the glare. That is a autographed by all surviving members copy of Love It to Death by Alice Cooper. this is pretty major stuff. Very major stuff. And each autograph has a story. The first one I got on this record was by Dennis Dunaway. The first time I met Dennis Dunaway was probably back around 1990. Ooh, boy, 5 or so, 4 or 5, somewhere around then. There was a time in his life when Dennis Dunaway had kind of retired from music, and he was working at a video store in Stamford, Connecticut, just working there. And a young lady who used to shop at my store was in there one Saturday, and she heard us playing Alice Cooper, and she said, "Oh yeah, this I work for this guy at a video store, and he used to be in Alice Cooper's group." And I thought, oh yeah, that's nice. Alice has had many people in his band, over the years. Who was it? And she said, his name is Dennis. And I said, Dennis? She said, yeah, Dennis. I said, Dennis Dunaway? She said, yeah, Dennis Dunaway, that's him. How'd you know? I said, because I'm a damn freak for Alice Cooper, that's why. Especially the original Alice Cooper group. Neil Smith, Glenn Buxton, Vincent Furnier, Dennis Dunaway, Neil Smith. Did I get all the names right? I don't know. Well, who did I get? Neil Smith, Michael Bruce, Dennis Dunaway, Vincent Furnier, and Glenn Buxton, who's not with us anymore. So, goddamn, you better believe that I made a point of driving all the way the heck down to Stamford to come face to face with the great Dennis Dunaway. And the only reason I felt comfortable doing that was she said, yeah, he likes to talk about the old days sometimes, and he gets kind of sad that he thinks people don't remember him anymore. And I said, well, do you think that if me and a friend drove down there, he'd want to sign some stuff? She said, oh yeah, he'd love it. So okay, we got the okay from his employee. So we drove down there and found the video. It was a place called Captain Video, if I recall correctly, in Stamford. It's a Saturday. We walk in, and it's a video store, right? If you're of the generation who remembers video stores, it's just a video store, just a regular, plain old suburban Connecticut video store. And there's some housewives in there, and just a couple of normal people sort of milling around a little bit, looking at Disney videos and stuff like that. And looking back to the back wall of the store behind this service counter window is this guy just sitting there very calmly, very quietly, doing his video work, checking them in and doing, whatever, pricing them, sorting them out, whatever. And it's Dennis Dunaway, man. It's Dennis Dunaway. So it took me, I was with my friend Greg, and it took the both of us a couple of minutes of knuckle biting and shuffling and wondering if we have the nerve to approach this guy, because we're talking original Alice Cooper group. Okay, I shouldn't have to say any more than that, so I'm not gonna. Okay, let's go back and talk to the man. So we walk back there, and I walk up to the service counter, and he's just working himself, and he says, hello. I said, are you the infamous Dennis Dunaway? And he was looking down, and he kind of looked up and had this kind of smile on his face. Yes, I am. And we proceeded to hang out for, I don't know how long, but it seemed like an awful long time, and he just told us stories and hung out and was just gracious as you can possibly hope. He was probably very happy to have some relief from checking in all those Disney VHSs from the housewives, and he was interrupted a few times by having to go help people and all that. But man, what a great host. And at the end of it, he did indeed honor us and humor us with our pile of stuff. And the first thing I had him sign was this copy of Love It to Death. So that was the first signature from the original Alice Cooper group. The second one, from the man himself, came about because my good friend Jen works as a secretary for somebody who works with Alice Cooper on a fairly regular basis. So at the time, Alice would stop by the office to take care of whatever business. And she would always give me a call and say, hey, Alice is going to be here next week. If you got something you want signed, give it to me and I'll have him do it. And this is going back years ago. This one's dated 1999. This is 24 years ago, before the paid meet and greet thing became official. So, I gave her a couple of things to sign, and lo and behold, he signed it. Right there on that same copy of Love It to Death. And then a few years later, and actually a bunch of years later, the two wild card guys in the band, because, Glenn Buxton, as I said, is not with us anymore, but Neil Smith and Michael Bruce, they're pretty hard to get autographs from, at least at the time they were, because they weren't really in the business anymore. They didn't really play a whole lot. They just really weren't in the public eye like that. Like, Neil Smith was a realtor and focusing on that, and Michael Bruce was just all over the place. If you want some Michael Bruce stories, check out back issues of Break On Through, as hosted by my boss, Jeff Clayton of Antiseen. Jeff managed Michael Bruce for a while, and he has told a few stories about the man, the myth, the Michael on Break On Through. Excuse me, look it up on the Antiseen official YouTube channel, or scroll back on the Antiseen Facebook page, scroll, and you'll find it eventually. So, yeah, we all got Michael Bruce stories. And hard to get his signature, especially because he's just so all over the place. But I was doing some record selling at a record fair somewhere in New Jersey a bunch of years ago. And what do you know? Guests of honor signing autographs, Neil Smith and Michael Bruce. Great. So I brought down my... I had a book that they signed. And I remember the signatures cost me $5 each, which at the time I kind of bristled at, because I never paid for autographs. I was like, I got to pay these guys $5 each to get stuff signed. Well, whatever. I want to get my book signed. I have an original copy of Billion Dollar Baby by Bob Greene, which is one of the best rock and roll biographies, road story books ever written. So I got that signed by the surviving four as well, and I had to pay them $5 each to do it. But this story here happened at my good pal Rick Tedesco. He's got a really great great guitar shop called Guitar Hanger in Brookfield, Connecticut. He does all my guitar setups, and super cool guy, very tight with the surviving members of Alice Cooper Group. And look, Harry's back again. You knew he couldn't stay away. And Dennis, Neil, and Michael were going to be playing with Alice Cooper in England as a reunion of the surviving original members of the Alice Cooper Group. And to warm up for it, they played a show at Guitar Hanger. So you had Neil Smith, Dennis Dunaway, and Michael Bruce with Rick Tedesco on lead guitar playing at this guitar shop in Brookfield, Connecticut on like a Tuesday night. And they were also doing, the meet and greet and get your stuff signed thing. So, once again, I was determined to get my signatures complete. So, of course, I went down there. It's one town over, for gosh sakes. One town over. This time, I had to pay, I think, $25 to get a signature from Michael Bruce. Whatever. You got to do what you got to do. If you want the signature, sometimes you got to pay. So I'm like, this opportunity is not going to come around anytime soon. So I paid Michael Bruce for the signature. No problem. But as I was doing that, Neil Smith was very quietly and very rapidly leaving the premises. I think he just did not want to partake in the whole thing at all. I didn't see him sign one autograph at all. He just was getting ready to leave. And so I'm like waiting for Michael to sign the album, and I've got my eye on Neil Smith as he's going out the door. And Michael Bruce signs. I'm like, thank you. I run out the door, and Neil Smith's already out. He's in the parking lot. And I ran out the door and kind of flagged him and said, hey, Neil. And he's like, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great. Would you sign this? And he said, well, I'm not really supposed to. And I said, well, you're not in there, are you? We're in the parking lot, right? He said, and he kind of grumbled, you know, didn't say anything, but you could tell he didn't really want to do it. But he did it. Thank you, Neil. And so that's how I got a set of canonical surviving member Alice Cooper group autographs. And the guitar pick is one that was used by Dennis Dunaway himself during the set, which he broke and then reached over and placed right in my hand, because I was, of course, standing front and center. Put it right there. I said, thank you, sir. So that's part of the display piece, Alice Cooper, which hangs in my music room to this day. Not for sale. I do live to sell, and I do sell to live, but not everything's for sale, gosh dang it. I've done a bit of show and tell on this one before. Of course, I'm not just an Antiseen bass player. I'm not just the Antiseen minister of Gan, duh. I'm a fan. So I got my copy of the most exquisite Antiseen Destructo Maximus book, which is still available from the Antiseen Big Cartel store, just saying. And I suspect that maybe if you sent Jeff Clayton a personal message, he might want to hook you up with one of these for a reasonable fee. Awesome book about the first 20 years of Antiseen, and I've made it my duty to get every single Antiseen alum I possibly could to sign it. And I've gotten quite a few of them, as you can see. But the quest continues. There's still a few Antiseen ancestors of mine that aren't in that book. The quest ain't over. I've done something similar with the most excellent Are We Not Men, We Are Devo book, written by my pal Jay Dillinger. Really, really good biography of Devo. And so, of course, I made it my business over the years to track down and get signatures from everybody in the book. Like, if they're mentioned in the book, if they talk in the book, if they're in the book in any way, shape, or form, I've gotten them to sign it. And I have signatures all throughout the book. On the frontispiece, on the back piece, scattered throughout the book on the pages, and of course the crowning signatures on this very nice plate of the 1980 era Devo. Mark, Jerry, Bob 1, and Bob 2. Of course, unfortunately no Alan, because Alan at the time, even though he was still on planet Earth, was only in Los Angeles, totally removed from the music business. And it's kind of like what I was saying earlier about Greg Norton. If you wanted to get Alan to sign something, you had to go track him down and hope he had the time and the temperament to do it. But hey, 4 out of 5 ain't bad. That's Devo. We got another couple here. I have sent away for autographs on occasion. I think I've only sent away for one, really. That's because, you know, Bill Wyman, for a while there, he was selling autographs via his website. I think this cost $35 for the portrait, and I framed it myself, but $35 for a hand-signed portrait? That's a Rolling Stone right there. Bill Wyman, a Rolling Stone? I thought it was well worth it. I think that might have even been $35 post-paid from the UK. I mean, it was ridiculously reasonable, I thought. So yeah, I did it. I got the signature, and this also hangs in my music room. Trivia fact, I got thrown out of a band once for emulating Bill Wyman's bass playing style. His bass playing style is wacky. Here's something. This one is kind of like the Husker autograph collection process. It took a very long time. I had to go to 3 separate gigs to do it. Because I didn't mention before that the members of Husker they never talk to each other. The breakup was very acrimonious and very bitter. Apparently Greg and Grant were still friendly, but Greg didn't talk to Bob. Bob didn't talk to Grant. Grant didn't, it was just one of those deals. So a factoid is that the 3 members of Husker Du were never in the same room together once after they broke up. Which explains why I had to go through all the rigmarole to get the signatures. I think something similar is probably true for the members of this band right here. If you know what that front cover is, if you know what that back cover is, maybe you don't. Maybe you know who those 3 guys are. But I had to go to 3 different gigs over a period of years to get a complete set of Grand Funk autographs. The reason being that while Don and Mel, the drummer and bass player, are still in a version of Grand Funk Railroad, which I call Grand Fake Railroad, just to let you know, or Grand Flunk Railroad. Don't get me started. Even though they're still in the band together, they are completely estranged from Mark Farner. Maybe they do have business meetings together or the occasional phone call or something, but the odds of them actually sharing a stage together are extremely slim. And on top of that, Don Brewer, the drummer, is not an easy guy to get a signature from. I found that out when I went to go see Grand Fake Railroad at the Berlin County Fair here in Connecticut back in 2008. They're playing, at the county fair amongst all the bales of hay in a corral next to the pig races. And I'm not exaggerating. The pig races were right over there. Grand Funk was over here in a corral. And the show was free with an admission to the fair. But if you wanted to get into the VIP circle, which meant inside the corral, you had to pay an extra $5. Okay, I'll pay the extra $5 to sit on a bale of hay and watch Grand Funk, who were louder than the pig races, just saying. You could hear Grand Funk, but not the pig races. Anyway, they play their very entertaining and polite set of rock and roll oldies, the majority of which were written by Mark Farner, who was not there. And they finish, and whatever. I go off to the area side stage where the band's going to be making their departure and go into their van. And, so there's a few of us out there, a few Grand Funk fans, and we're hanging around, milling around. And sure enough, here comes Mel Shocker, bass player for Grand Funk Railroad. Now, I might be a little bit snide about the current version of GFR, but let's face it, we're talking about Mel Shocker. We're talking about a giant amongst bass players who has never gotten his fair due as being one of the best, one of the very, very best. And he's right there. And what do you know? He's a very friendly, approachable dude. He stopped and talked to everybody. He posed for pictures. He was conversational. And yes, he signed my copy of Phoenix. He also signed my copy of Closer to Home, but for some reason he signed on the front in black marker on a mostly black cover, so you can't really see the signature. It was a mild bummer, but I wasn't gonna, complain or ask for a refund or anything because he didn't charge me anything. So, okay, I got one. Don Brewer, while all this is going on, walked from the stage across the parking lot away from us into the van and just sat there waiting for Mel to finish with us, the fans. He just sat there. And, you know, some people said, hey, Don, come over here. Hey, Don, come on. He just ignored everybody. He just sat there, like, just didn't want to know. And, you know, somebody was like, come on, man. Just one? Just for a minute? Come on. Like, you know, this one dude was starting to get a little bit irritated. And Don Brewer just sat there, would not move, did not acknowledge us. He waited. You know, he waited until Mel was done being user-friendly, and Bruce Kulick, also formerly of Kiss, was in this version of Grand Funk, and he signed autographs and stuff. He waited until those guys were done. Fine. He didn't try to rush them along or get them out of there. He let them be friendly, but the whole time he just sat there. So no Don Brewer signature. Talking to some of the people who were like super diehard fans who were there, they said you got to get Don before the show. He'll sign before the show if you catch him, but he won't sign after. Okay. Noted. Duly noted. Meanwhile, Mark Farner, who is also regularly on tour, on the road quite a bit, makes it his business to do what Bob Mould does. He plays his set, takes a minute to take a breather and cool down or whatever, and then he goes right out to the merch table, and he will stand there until every single autograph has been signed. He will pose for pictures. He'll chat with you for a minute. Super user-friendly, 100% approachable, right on, salt-of-the-earth guy. So that's where I got my Mark Farner signature. I can't show it to you because I'm a little bit encumbered, and I don't want to... Well, I can do this. I'm not that precious with it. So that's where I got my Mark Farner signature. Mark in the middle. So, all right. And he also signed my Closer to Home and a bunch of solo stuff as well. So we still got to crack the Don Brewer nut. We still got to get the Don Brewer signature. How the F am I going to do that? To do that, it means I got to find another show where Grand Fake Railroad is playing and get there early and hope I can actually intersect with the dude. All right. I'm a patient guy. I'll wait. And sure enough, time keeps on ticking, ticking, ticking into the future. A future where Grand Flake Railroad plays at a venue called the Ridgefield Playhouse, which is one town over from Danbury. And this guy who used to work for me was the manager at the time. He said, we got Grand Funk coming. I said, may I? He said, yes, you may. Not only that, I'll put you on the meet and greet list. I said, yes, meet and greet list. I'm going to get me a Don Brewer autograph. Yes. Maybe two. So the day comes. I go down to the Ridgefield. I got my Closer to Home and my Phoenix. And I'm ready to get Don Brewer signatures. And it's one of those official meet and greets. By this time, it's one of those pay to play deals. You had to pay to stand in line and get a photo op with Grand Flake Railroad, and they weren't going to sign anything. Photos only. I'm like, fuck, I don't want my picture with these guys. I want the signatures. Whatever, I'm there. Stand in line. You know, everybody's like, hi, you know, friendly showbiz. Hey, yeah, we're going to pose for a picture with this guy in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Yeah. What? Yeah, great. I got a couple of photos. Wonderful. Get out of here, boy. And I was like, man, I want a Don Brewer signature. I want a Don Brewer signature. Or two if I can. I want them. So, okay, whatever. I go out to the front, sit down. The show begins. They play their set. It's very fine, fun, friendly, entertaining, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I want the signature. Show's over. I said, damn it, I'm going to get me one. I don't care. So I went up to the dude who was the manager there, the guy who used to work for me. I said, man, I don't know what's going on, but I really want to get this album signed. Will you please get this done for me? And I generally don't ask for favors like that. Because this guy already got me into the show. He put me on the meet and greet list. I didn't have to pay for it. You know, he's already gone pretty far out of his way to hook a former employer up, you know. He's already really done his duty. I'm like, man, would you? He said, I'll see what I can do. So he personally took the record, walked it backstage, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. You know, everybody's leaving, place is clearing out, you know, the merch table's packing up. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. After a while, the dude comes out from backstage and says, here. I said, yeah? He said, yeah. Don Brewer. The single most user-unfriendly member of Grand Flunk Railroad signed my album. Looks like he did it in a hurry, but you know what? He did it. And I got my signatures. Yay! So thank you, Jay Law, for going the extra kilometer to hook your old slave driver up. Much appreciated. I will save a spot in heaven for you. No problem. And that, my friends, basically ends the story of my autograph hounding. There's plenty more I could talk about, but, you know, my larynx is getting a little bit tired. Harry is very comfortably sitting here. I'm going to let him sit here for a little while I log off and see what's going on the internet in the hour or so that I've been on here. I might have missed something. Who knows? So as always, guys, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Love having an audience to yammer at for an hour or so every week. If you can at all possibly make it, come on down to the Danbury Record and CD Expo this Saturday, the 21st. VF Hall number 149 in Danbury. I am loaded for not one, not two, but a whole den of bears. And we got a whole room full of other really cool record sellers who are going to be there. If I don't see you there, I'll be back in about 167 hours right here on your favorite internet channel. So until then, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.